George Clanton, Urapaya, album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from Mr. George Clanton, a Virginia-based electronic artist. He has been at it for quite a few years, recording under different names. I initially caught wind of his when he was recording under the name Mirror Kisses, and I was very much in my VaporWave scene, and I honestly loved the hell out of this thing. I thought it had a lot going for it. I still do. I think it's super underrated, some of his stuff, under the Mirror Kisses name. But around that time, shortly after, he started recording under his own name. He put out his 100% Electronica album, and I thought it was a little spotty at points, a little rough around the edges, but overall, I still thought that George's sound was really unique, really interesting. He was bringing a lot of cool ideas to the table that I wish that a lot of other artists really kind of doubled down on. But if I was already kind of a big fan of what he was doing, I became a full-blown mega fan overnight when his Slide album dropped. This thing, man, I love this album so much. It is just a great blend of classic Vaporwave and Chillwave with some Hypnagogic pop and some Neo-Psych thrown in, all with this very glistening, very 90s aesthetic that I just thought he did so well with. The songs on here were also super instantaneous, unbelievably catchy. I was really loving what George was doing. Now, the last time we heard from Mr. Clanton, he put out one of the probably one of the oddest collaboration albums that I've heard over the last 5 years or so. Just, God, there's no reason that this album should be as good as it is. But I'm talking about his collaborative project with Nick Hexum of 311 fame, who I was never a 311 guy growing up, but somehow, some way, these guys connected and put together this unbelievably blissful, sunny, colorful album that just made me want to get out, go to the beach, enjoy the summer, and more. I thought it was really good. Now, it's been quite some time since we've heard from George on his own, and leading up to this album, I really did like the singles he was dropping. And you know what? I really do think this is one of his best works. The album starts off with Everything I Want. It is just this big, gaudy, colorful explosion of sound. In a lot of ways, this really does pick up almost directly where Slide left off. It's hazy, it's definitely a little psychedelic, but it's also very joyous, very human, very sweet. It puts me in such a good mood, and much like his collaboration with Nick Hexum, this is my kind of summer jam. This is what makes me want to get out and enjoy the warm weather. It's bright, it's well produced, it's a hell of a start. And Justify Your Life, I still think it's the best track here. This track is all gravy, baby. I love the bulky beat and just how sunny and hazy this comes off, and George's performance here is one of his most passionate. All the while, it remains just as charming and, you know, I don't know, semi-nostalgic as some of his best stuff is. Catchy as well. Now, I will say this is an album as a whole is a little less obsessed with the 90s than Slide was, and that might turn you off a little bit. But everything comes together still and seemingly sounds so fresh. I've Been Young also, since this dropped as a single, it has just done nothing but grow on me. It's probably one of the smoothest sounding tracks here, and while, like I just said, this album is a little less more, I don't know, stuck in the 90s, if you did like the 90s sounds of Slide, honestly, this is probably going to be your track of the album. It's just so sweet on the ears, it's so unbearably catchy, it's well produced, it's passionate. And listen, this is a beefy cut. This is over 5 minutes of a track, but I don't think that there's a single dull moment here. Overall, I'm loving the hell out of this album, even if one or two tracks here turn dark very quickly and just are risks that George takes that do not pay off. Like Punching Down, for example. This is really ugly. It gets ugly very fast. And, you know, I'm going to just say it, this is one of the most enjoyable pop, experimental, sort of weirdo, hazy pop albums that you're going to hear all year. But what the hell is this? I mean, I think there is a good song buried deep down. Like, very deep down. Like, the beat from a distance actually is not that bad. It almost reminds me of some old school Neon Indian, think like Psychic Chasms era, but this production, wow, like what happened here? It is so muddy, and George doesn't even, you know, really shine on a track like this. He gets drowned out by everything else going on. And what does come through, he just sounds bored. It doesn't even have a big catchy hook. It's not a good track. And FUML featuring Negative Gemini is not much better. This to me, on the other hand, is just overkill. It's way too much. I mean, there is a simplicity to George's music that I usually cling to. That's the area of George's music that makes me smile the most. And then I hear this track, and it sounds like he's trying to cram so much in that nothing really stands out, and the little that does is just so faceless. This sounds like any SoundCloud vaporwave sit-at-home DJ that's trying to do something cool and rip off George's sound. It's very disappointing. Thankfully, though, the rest of this album is actually pretty thrilling, as George actually takes a lot of risks. Like You Hold the Key and I Found It on one hand. This track is one of the weirdest and biggest risks that George takes here. While remaining as colorful and gloriously textured, this is one of the most ethereal and mysterious tracks that George has ever put out. And I really love the way that George takes his time on this track. This is a slow burner of a tune. It really does, take its time. Builds up this atmosphere, lets you escape into it. It's hazy, it's hard to place, and really easy to escape into. And I love the wonky synths and George's very stoned, laid-back performance here. It's great. Vapor King and SubReal, I honestly could say a lot of the same things about this track. This single, it took me some time to really cozy up to, just because of how weird and far out it gets, but it's done nothing but grow on me. It's very dense, it's very hard to place, and once again, it's got a hell of an atmosphere. It's a big leap, but between George's signature vocals and the lo-fi production, it really is a trip, but it feels like a major leap for George. This is one of the most progressive and, really forward-thinking tracks he's done in a very long time. And the second half of this track is just so groovy and hazy. Like, I'm very impressed with how George is growing as an artist. This track is an experience. Rapaya as a title track here, it is just hazy, psychedelic ear candy. It's so blissful and sweet though, and I love the sunny, sort of hazy atmosphere we get. And there is so much passion here and so much nostalgia. It really does tug at quite a few heartstrings. And with the layers and layers and layers of synths, it's easily one of the most meditative and kaleidoscopic tracks that we get here. Will this album be for everyone? No, I would absolutely say not. But once again, as far as like a summery album goes, this is my cup of tea. And as a finale for You, I Will, featuring Hatchie. This is one of the most exciting and genuinely thrilling tracks here. First of all, A+ collaboration. I love me some Hatchie, and these two play off each other really wonderfully. This is one of the bulkiest tracks here. It's a serious slow burner. It's even a little dark sounding in parts, but between the really layers of production, the super cool beat, and Hatchie's vocals, very ethereal vocals floating through the background, there's a lot to love. It's dense, but George does so well with it. And like this to me, just honestly more than anything reminds me he's got a lot of growing to do still. He's not done progressing as an artist. He's got a lot of tricks up his sleeves, and I can't wait to see what he does next, because this album is great. Will this album be for everybody at the end of the day? No, a lot of people might just write this off as another hazy, super heady vaporwave project, but I think it's got a lot going for it. There's a lot of progressive ideas on this album. George's, sense of nostalgia and lo-fi production and his ability to write unbelievably catchy hooks is still a huge deal. And if you were, into his Slide album, you may be a little disappointed to see his departure from the sort of very nostalgic 90s sound to this thing. But as far as a weirdo pop album that combines elements of vaporwave, chillwave, neo-psych, and more, this is probably one of the most interesting albums I've heard all year. Feeling a decent 8 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.